Okay, we're in action. Our meeting today is a workshop on the 12th step. At this time, I will turn the meeting over to our first speaker. Let's welcome Tony D.
Hey, family. Hey. My name is Tony D, and I'm an addict. Hey. Grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to be here clean, free from the obsession and the compulsion to use drugs. You know, we got a message around here in Narcotics Anonymous. An addict, any addict, can stop using drugs, lose his desire to use, and find a new way to live. The message is hope, promise to freedom. Real grateful to be here. I didn't come out here to entertain nobody. I didn't come out here to tell nobody what to do. But I came out here to share my hard-won experience. I want to thank the committee for asking me to do this because I know the task behind putting on a convention. I got clean 2005 in October the 26th. I just celebrated 20 years, 1 month, and 4 days. I'm real grateful for the process of the process of the process. So when the literature says any addict, we talking about black addict, white addict, gay addict, straight addict, trans addict, Latino addict. We talking about any addict. We don't separate you from the program of Narcotics Anonymous. We the only program that don't separate people. That's right. We might have our difference, but we don't separate people. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I was minding my own business and I was coming out of the store and Grant saw me and he said, "Hey, can you share on the 12 steps?" That's what he told me the topic was, right? And I said, yes, when anybody asks me to do something in Narcotics Anonymous, I'm willing to do it. I really don't want to do it, but I'll do it. And the reason why I really don't want to do it, and maybe this is what God telling me that I need to do because I need to get clean and centered. So when I look at the first step say we admitted that we was power over our addiction and our lives had become unmanageable, right? So when I came in, I did not know if I was an addict or not. The stigma wouldn't let me know if I was an addict. Because the stigma of me calling myself an addict or a junkie or something, I'm telling myself that this is defeating me. But when I got with a sponsor, see, sponsorship is the heartbeat of this process. They say in the fellowship that if you're sponsoring yourself, you're sponsoring the food. The literature don't say that, but people in the fellowship got experience that if you're sponsoring yourself, you're probably sponsoring a food. But when I looked at the first step, it says we admitted that we were. Were mean past tense. Today, I ain't powerless over drugs. Today, the first step gave me a choice coming out the door. It gave me a choice to either stay here or leave. One of the most important things for me is that in the basic text, it basically says that it don't matter how we got here and who our connection was, right? It says staying clean has to come first. Staying clean has to come first. And I know staying clean has to come first, but a lot of times If you've been in meetings, you hear the old timers or the sometimers. They'll say clean time don't equal recovery, right? Because the literature say that. But in order to recover, you got to be clean. In order to recover, you got to be clean. And when I look at the spiritual principles in the first step, we have spiritual principle of humility is in the first step. Surrender is in the first step. Honesty is in the first step. Acceptance is in the first step. So when I look at the principles in the first step, I have a lot of principles that I can work with. So I'm going to share my own personal experience. See, when I first got here, surrender was not the game for me. What I held on to was the word called acceptance. Because I had to accept that I had a problem with something. And I had to accept that every time I got 30 days clean or 60 days clean or 90 days clean, I would go back to the scene of the crime. And I kept wondering why I kept going back to the scene of the crime. And what happened was I did not really accept that I had a drug problem. And when I started to accept that I had a problem, I started to get better. See, the first step is real important. The reason why they wrote the first and second step without God, because they didn't want us to think that we was in a cult. Y'all know what that means, right? Huh? Because we have some people who don't believe. So that's the reason why they didn't put God in the first step. And that's why they didn't put God in the second step. They waited to the third step. So the second step says we came to believe in a power greater than ourselves who can restore us back to sanity. The second step really telling us that we was crazy. The second step says we are crazy. We know that once we go use, our lives is going to be messed up. But we go do it anyway. And we're looking for different results. And the results we get is we keep getting the same results. So when I look at the second step, the key word in the second step for me is believe. Because see, if I don't believe I can do this, then I won't do it. I got to believe in the process of the process on top of the process. See, when I look at the spiritual principles in the second step of being open-minded, see, if I'm always talking, when am I ever listening? Huh? When can I be open-minded and trust the process that people who came before me know that this thing worked, and they only give suggestions that if you do this, your life will get better. Because that's the only thing we give around here is suggestions. And when I look at the courage of the second step, right? The second step is saying, Tony D, you ain't in charge. You ain't the boss. Sit down somewhere. You couldn't even stop using on your own. You had to have something else to help you stop. See, we're not here today by accident. We're not here by accident. It was a reason that somebody purged and plugged in us that we are here sitting in this convention. We may have 1 day clean. We may have 30 years clean. We may have 40 years clean. But imagine life without it. So the second step is real important to me because, see, if you got a basic text, go back and read the second step in the basic text. And the basic text in the second step says this is the only step that we have to continually doing. It says that if we're going to achieve ongoing recovery, we must keep working this step right here. We got to keep working the second step. We got to have a sponsor in our lives. Or either the wife or the girlfriend or the boyfriend or the partner, somebody in our lives to help us along the way. Because what I knew about living, it almost killed me. And see, the third step came down to we made a decision. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And see, I had a problem with the third step when I first got clean. I had a problem with the third step because I was angry with God when I first got clean. And I was angry because I come from a religious background family, and they told me that this God that we were serving, that it was loving and caring and kind and all this, but he led me to the bridge. He led me to be homeless. I looked like Wolfman Jack when I got here. I was dirty, stinking, and nasty. So that's the God you want me to serve. And I had a problem with the third step, but thank God for sponsorship. My sponsors say, you can be angry at God right now. But what I want to show you in the third step, that the third step is a two-party step. We're going to make a decision. And then when we get there, we're going to turn it over. And how are we going to turn it over? We're going to put some action behind what we're talking about. Because the third step is about action. The third step is about willingness. Willingness and action. The fourth step, say we made a feeling more inventory of ourselves. The fourth step was one of the steps that I hear a lot of newcomers and people say, oh, when I went to the fourth step, I was so fearful that I was so scared that I didn't want to write the fourth step. When I went to the fourth step, I was ready to write the fourth step. And I'm going to tell you the reason why I was ready to work the fourth step. A lot of time, we get in meetings and we share like Shakespeare. Yeah. Sometimes we think the meeting is entertainment. Who can outshare who? Huh? Who can have the powerful message? But what happened to me in the fourth step is that the literature says that we have to go outside and get some help. See, Narcotics Anonymous is not the only way. We got to go outside and get some help. So early in the game, I had to go to therapy. And I went to therapy. And when I went to therapy, I sat down with the therapist, and me and the therapist talked about my daddy issues. Talked about why I did not like the man who was my father, that poured in me, that gave me whatever I wanted, but I didn't like him because he was a military man and he thought we was one of his cadets. And I didn't like him and I was angry at him. And I had to go to therapy and I had to talk about some stuff with my dad and these daddy issues that was affecting me. Early in the game with therapy. So when it came to the fourth step, I was ready. And I didn't put everything down in the fourth step because the sponsor I had, I knew he was a good sponsor, but I didn't trust that if I wrote something on that paper and we went over it, he wouldn't go tell nobody. I didn't have no trust. But what I found out in the fourth step, being honest, because the fourth step is about being honest, and it's sorting through the contradiction and the confusion. And what I found out in the fourth step, after we went over the fourth step, some of the things I talked about in the fourth step, he looked at me and said, it happened to me too. And see, I do an inventory every day on my life. Because I don't know. I'm just one bad decision with 20 years or not. I'm just one bad decision from messing my life up all over again. So that takes me to the fifth step. The fifth step talks about the exact nature The fifth step talks about some humility. The humility piece is I have to ask for some help. Even though I've been around here for a while, I still have to ask for help. And I have to get to the exact nature of what's going on with me and how I'm feeling. And I have to talk about it. Because I don't know what I'm going to need. And the sixth step talks about us being entirely ready. Entirely ready. The reason why I really didn't want to share, and I gave him heads up that I'm going to share and I'm going to sit down, but I'm going to share because it don't matter who in the room. It could be two people in this room. It don't matter who in the room. What matters is that I share about where I'm at. And I share about how the steps have continually been in my life, that when things happen, when we have difficult situations around here, when things happen, even though I got a sponsor, I can always go back to the steps. So 11 months ago, which was January, and I was born on the 6th, and my mother called me, and she said, happy birthday. Matter of fact, she sung happy birthday to me. And we talked a little bit. We talked about I being grateful. And we talked about me being the oldest. But the next week, I got a phone call from my sister. And she said, Mom just passed. It's something in the first step that I held hold to like water. In the flat book, the step working guide book, or whatever you want to call it, it asks you a question about reservation. If something happened, what reservation are you still holding on to? And I always said if something happened to my mother, I don't know what I would do. Well, I got a chance to find out. Someone who I love, who have been with me, even through the using and everything. I found out what to do. I called some people. I cried. I shared where I was at. And 3 months ago, I did what the program and sponsorship taught me. With 20 years clean, and I ain't wagging the clean time. With 20 years clean, I didn't think that I needed to go back to therapy. I had to call it grief therapy. I'm in grief therapy right now, and we talking about my feelings and my emotions of how this death have torn me apart. So I'm in therapy about 3 weeks ago, and the therapist said, well, I want you to write down some things about your mother that you missed. And I could write 2 things down. And after I wrote them 2 things down, only thing I'm seeing was the paper was flooded with tears and water. I couldn't go no further than 2. Sometimes therapy is overwhelming. But I know that I got to continually doing this work so I can get better. See, using it is not the option. See, because this has been a hell of a year I just haven't used. Because I got some people in my corner. And then after I lost my mother, 19 years as a substance abuse counselor, believing that I was one of the greatest out there. I believe that. But after 19 years working in substance abuse as a counselor, that's what you know. I lost my job. I lost my job. When I lost my job, before I could go home, I had to go somewhere and had to sit down and had to sit there and think. Now, how is you finna go home and tell your wife that you just lost your livelihood, man? The insecurity came in. That she gonna look at me like I'm already an addict and I ain't no good, so I can't keep it. It messed with me. And I had to take a drive. And I had to go meet somebody. And we went and sat down at a table and ate and broke bread. And we talked about it's okay. The literature says that we're going to lose death of loved ones. We're going to lose a relationship. We're going to lose a job. You know all this stuff. It's okay. The only thing you must not do is use. That's period. Period. What I had to do, I had to go back to the previous step. I'm not talking about 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. I had to go from 6 all the way back to 1 to stay here. I had to go back to the previous steps that have poured inside of me, that have poured in my spirit. Right? So I told y'all this been a year and a half, right? Then I almost lost my home. I said, God, what are you doing? What are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to show me? I've been doing good. I've been a productive member of society. I sponsor guys. I go to meetings. I go to conventions. I do what you asked me to do. What are you trying to show me? What are you trying to tell me? I got the answer. On any given day, if you ain't ready for these adversity that's going to hit us in recovery clean, we might just go use. My first 10 years in recovery, I can tell you, and the gentleman here can tell you, he's been knowing me for a while. The first 10 years in this process, I ran on ego. It was all about me. Yeah. This is my first time in a long time sharing behind a podium. I had to stop sharing behind this podium here. Because the reason why I was sharing, going to different conventions, sharing all over the country, everywhere. And the podium was good, and I'm in there and the woozing and doozing the folks, right? Everybody says, share your ass off. You know, ego running. And then I lose my first wife. And I lose my first wife because of the podium. Because I'm sharing all over the country. And you just sit here until I get back. I'm paying the bills. I'm the man. You just sit here. And I messed my marriage up. Because the podium was important. The podium was important. So what my sponsor did was he suggested that I get off behind this podium here. And that's probably the best suggestion he have gave. He have gave me a lot of good suggestions, but that was probably one of the best he gave me was don't go speak nowhere. Period. You got to get yourself back together. Your ego is running wild. And if you ain't careful, you're going to go use. So I took my sponsor's suggestion. And it's been beneficial. I've been getting phone calls to go share. I've been saying no. I'm taking care of Tony. Tony is who I'm taking care of. I went back to my mom's house 3 weeks ago to go there, and I couldn't even get to the front door. See, I'm doing some work with a grief therapy, and I'm doing work because I need to continue to do the work so I can continue to stay safe, man. I ain't trying to be the model of recovering addict around here. I'm trying to stay safe. I'm trying to stay serene. I ain't trying to be self-righteous. If you're new in this program, sponsorship is the heartbeat of this program. Find a sponsor. Somebody who's going to work with you. Who's going to give you some juice. Who want to help you get your life back together. Not nobody who want to be your daddy or your mama or whatever, right? Because see, what we have found as a fellowship, right? They always say, well, you know, the newcomers don't need to be sleeping around and doing all this, you know, some of self-righteous old-timers around here, right? And me being who I am, I say, why not? I used to love when the newcomers tell me, boy, you shared pretty good. And I said, what's your phone number? Yeah. See, we need to leave people alone. The program didn't say don't have sex. It says stop using. See, if I'm always focused on the using, when I'm going to focus on the stopping? Because a lot of times I just keep focused on using. But when am I ever going to focus on the stopping? So I'm going to say this and I'm going to be done. Anybody here got one day clean? 10? 9? 20? 30? Oh, we got some people with some clean time here. How much time you got? 2 months. 2 months? I know what that was like. Give yourself a break, man. Find a sponsor. Someone who's going to work with you, who's willing to work with you. This is what I want to say before I close, so the young lady can have some time. This program is all-inclusive. This program is about alcohol, drugs, AZAC, whatever. It's all-inclusive. This program do not take a difference from drugs. Drugs. What we need to know in order to get better is just practice the first 3 steps. Give me some honesty and some acceptance and some humility. Let me have some open-mindedness and some trust. And let me do it with some action and some faith that my life is going to get better. Believe it. Just keep showing up. No matter what happens, show up. Thanks for letting me share.
I don't know about y'all, but that's some good stuff. I remember when I even started thinking that I might be able to get clean and stay clean is when I heard other addicts sharing about their pain. Losing kids, losing parents, all kinds of crazy stuff going on in life, and they got through it clean before, during, and after, and that meant the world to me. That was really a stepping stone for me. All right. We're going to let our next speaker get up here. Let's welcome AJM.
I'm AJ, I'm an addict.
Hey, AJ.
Whew. Thank you, Tony, for sharing. They asked me if I wanted, the order of speakers. They'll ask you. And I was like, I want to go second. And, you know, that response is based in insecurity. Because I've been here for years. And yet anytime I've ever been asked to share, like my brain is like, you don't know anything about that. Like I was asked to share on the 12th step. And I'm like, what's the 12th step? You know what I mean? Like totally just like nothing, just blank. And so of course, as I look into the 12th step, I'm like, oh, this is Narcotics Anonymous. And like the cool thing about the 12th step is that the day I got here, I started practicing it unknowingly, right? Because if you have a day clean, you have experience, you know, and like what a beautiful thing. So, and I feel like this always happens as well as, you know, if I'm asked to share, I'm not a Tony. I'm not a, you know, circuit speaker or anything. But when I am, I feel like the bottom's fallen out at some point very recently. I'm like, motherfucker. And like, you know, I think for a long time, for many years, I went to sleep on the program of Narcotics Anonymous. Up until about a year and a few months ago, I was asked to share at a convention. And so it was our local convention in Nashville. And I hadn't been asked to share in a very long time. And so I was going to the breakouts and the speakers and everything. And my heart broke because I was like, AJ, you're a member of Narcotics Anonymous. Like, where have you been? You know, people sharing about the principles and the steps and recovery and relapse and our literature and quoting it. And I'm like, that is beautiful. Where have you been? Like, I remember when I got here, Narcotics Anonymous became everything to me. It was everything because what it gave me was connection. The last speaker shared about that. I came to listen to Christine share, and she was sharing about the third tradition, and like she probably said 2 words, tears in my eyes already. I'm like, okay, this is good, and like this for me started with just the desire, not even the desire to stop using, but the desire for things to be different than they were. Because I didn't know recovery and being clean was possible, nor did I really think that was going to be a thing for me. The idea sounded okay. I was using, so it was like, okay. But I just never saw that as my journey, you know, that to be going to be part of my journey. And so like when I got here, and in Narcotics Anonymous, like I started gaining the connection, right? Because that's what addiction took for me, was connection. It took purpose. So, you know, addiction took away principles that I was born with, right? And then as, you know, I was growing up, I was conditioned to either practice a principle or sleep on the principle, because if I did practice the principle, I would experience pain, right? Like with honesty. When I was young, if I was honest about something, generally it would result in punishment. And then like honest about my emotions, because when I was 5, I was already seeing a therapist because my emotions were too much. Because I felt so much when I was so little. And I didn't know how to express it. So I cried and I was angry. I had tantrums. You know, and then I had a mom who said to me a week ago, she kept asking me what was wrong because I'm also in therapy, and I've been working on a lot of things, and sometimes I'm just sad because I'm feeling pain that I'd slept on for so many years. And she said, yeah, maybe you do just need to cry. When you were little, I would just make you cry, and you always seemed to do better. And my mom and I have a close relationship. I love my mom dearly, and when she said that, what she didn't know is that she was talking to me at 5 years old, because I was like, I'm in this body, but like emotionally at that time, like my 5-year-old was present. Except this time I'm able to understand exactly what she just said to me. And just how fucked up that was. I'm like, well, that's one way to do it. Thank you so much. So when I was at the convention last year, it's funny how God works looking back, but a friend of mine, one of my best friends, had just gotten a new sponsor, and we've had some crossover in sponsorship, because she's like, oh, this chick's fire, and I'm like, oh, I want a fire sponsor, and I'm like, oh, and so we just, whatever. But anyway, she had this sponsor, this amazing sponsor, and of course, because no matter how long I've been here, it's never easy to pick up the phone to call somebody that I don't know, and that I'm calling with the intention of getting something from them, right? The acknowledgement of like, I don't have the answer and I need help, right? That humility piece that Tony was talking about. And so, desperation is a wonderful thing. And I was in a place of desperation that I became willing to call this woman. And then she hurt my feelings every time we spoke. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe this is a bad idea. Obviously, we shouldn't communicate anymore. And she was just telling me all the things that I needed to hear. And because I'd been so disconnected from Narcotics Anonymous, the first, I think, after years, I'd worked steps. I was in H&I for many years, sponsorship, and then somewhere along the line, I maybe, ego, I had arrived and I was good enough. And as a result of that, I caused myself and those around me a lot of harm. I was causing harm, and I just didn't understand why. And in the 12th step in our basic text, it says, when we first begin to enjoy relief from our addiction, we run the risk of assuming control of our lives again. We forget the agony and pain that we have known. Our disease controlled our lives when we were using. It is ready and waiting to take over again. We quickly forget that all our past efforts at controlling our lives failed. Right? So that's where I was at. I had found relief from myself and freedom from addiction, and just clearing out a lot of that baggage, and then I just coasted for a really long time. I didn't know this at the time. I just want to say that. I didn't know this was happening until I went to that convention. And like the great thing about getting to a place of desperation is that I generally, it doesn't come without a lot of pain and generally harm causing in my experience, whether that's to myself or others. And I forgot what I was saying, so I don't know. But but I started working with this woman, and one thing she noticed really quickly was that self-pity. I forgot already. self-pity became kind of my just state of being, unknowingly. And I remember, like, when I first got here, like, I was 23 years old, and I'm educated, but, like, I had no idea what the word hope meant. I mean, like, I like, knew, but, like, I never, like, looked it up, right? Like, I definitely couldn't resonate with it, I will say that. But, like, just, I mean, hope, even honesty, like, I understood the concept. Like, honest to me, when I got here, was not stealing, right? Like, that I could get with. That made sense. And so, but, like, today, so through working with this woman, I started working a first step, and it, like, reignited the passion and the light that recovery once gave me, right? And it ignited that passion that I had about Narcotics Anonymous. And I realized, because I think, just looking back at who I was when I got here, and even for years, my perception has changed, right? So going back to a first step, I was like, holy fuck, holy shit, I never have to pick up to be so miserable. And Tony was talking about using, essentially, without using, right? And I'm, like, using all these things, like control. Control is one. But I was using what I found through working the first step, one of the principles in the first step. She does a lot of principle work. So after I work this step, then I also work the principles within that step, right? Which is great for me, because I could, like, give you an idea of what principles mean, and, like, which steps embody what principles, maybe, if I thought about it for a minute. But when I started writing about honesty, right? So what she has me do is I write the definition of honesty in my own words. And then I write, like, a recovery definition, just in my own. And then I write the actual definition of honesty. And then when I went to sleep on that principle, when did I stop practicing honesty, right? Because I didn't come out the womb just not being honest. You know what I mean? Something conditioned me to get to that point. And what was it? And then what did I do instead? And it was just, I mean, honestly, it gave me hope. And I can't tell you, prior to a year ago, the last time I felt hope, or if I ever knowingly felt it. And, like, today, honesty is freedom from deceit. But not only that, and most importantly to me, through working this first step in these principles, is self-deceit, deceit to me. Because I think I've been around long enough that I know people, and people just think I am this way, right? And that I'm just, like, doing A, and, like, my sponsees always tell me, you're so great. I'm like, okay, you don't know me. But, like, they do, and I am. But, like, also, I struggle so much. And it's so important for me to say that, because, I just kind of accepted the life that I was living. Then I went to the convention and realized, holy fuck, I'm miserable as shit. And had that not happened, I don't know if I'd be clean right now. Like, that's where I was at. Like, you're going to pick up or kill yourself any day now. And so anyway, I realized that I am not vulnerable. And I was floored by this, because I did not believe this. I didn't think this was true. If you would have asked me, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so vulnerable. And anyone that knows me would have said the same thing. Because I can share about things after the fact, very, very openly, and, like, emotional, and, all the things. And share my experience and strength with it. But when I'm in it, can I pick up the phone and call someone and say, I'm so fucked up? coming up on 13 years clean. So fucked up that my partner and I just built a house right outside of Nashville. We've been together like 10 years, and we haven't lived together full time in years because it's a long story, but I'd be away a few nights a week, and then she would be as well. And so we moved into this house, and within 20 days, we're at a place where she said, I need space. So I left for 5 days. Coming up on 13 years, right? Because in my mind, I should be something. I should be somebody. I should be able to live at home and not need space for my partner, because society tells me that's a fucking problem, that this isn't going to work, that I'm not good enough, that I'm a failure. But it was actually beautiful, and it was all done with love. It's not like, you fucking, like, we got in a big blowout and then I left. That's not how it went at all. It was like, oh shit, she has boundaries, you know, and holds my feet to the fire and holds me accountable for my actions. And then generally as a result of that, I have to get honest with myself and be like, holy shit, I've been causing you harm on a daily basis by being critical, judgmental, controlling. And that's abuse for me. That's abuse. So it's really hard to sit here and say, I was abusive to my partner who I've been with for 10 years. I'm fairly successful in like all ways. And here I am. I'm abusive. That's abuse. And that's humbling as fuck and painful. Because like, AJ, what have you not done to get to where you are, right? And then I start shaming myself, and then I go into self-pity, poor me, you know? And so a week ago, I am leaving therapy, and I'm sitting alone in a parking lot, crying. And I know there's a meeting that night. And I also know that people sometimes go out to eat before it. And so I had texted earlier in the day a friend of mine, and she said, yeah, we're going to go eat. I said, what time and where? And she said, yay. And in my mind, it was just like, what time and where? Like, I just need all the information, and then I'm going to try to stay alive until that time. And so I was sitting alone in a parking lot, and I text my sponsee, because she goes to this dinner, and I said, what are you doing? She said, oh, just whatever. What are you doing? I said, sitting alone in a parking lot crying. And she said, what are you doing? Come over. And I was like, okay. Right, because I'm practicing vulnerability. It's something I've been practicing all year because it's not easy for me. A lot of times when sponsees and just people come to me talking to me about their relationship, I'm like, I understand where he's coming from. I'm very, like, emotionally, I can generally identify more so with their male partner. And so I say that to say, and I'm not saying, I am stereotyping and generalizing, but I'm not saying all men are that way, okay? I've known a lot of men and they were, okay? My dad was that way, my brother's that way, and whatever. So, in my experience, and so I am practicing, because what's so hard for me to say is, like, if she does something, like we were at the storage unit and she is my partner, I'm backing up just a little bit. A couple months ago before we moved, I was at the storage unit doing way more than I needed to be doing, but I'm just doing the most all the time. And she ended up coming up there against our better judgment. And, you know, she was just like, their energy, like, was very, like, angry and just irritable and meh. Not good. And long story short, she triggered my dad. So her emotional output triggered my dad. I immediately shut down. And I say I have not been okay since. Because before that, I was okay. Everything was good. Okay? But what's so hard for me to do, and what I've not been able to do until like this week, is say, hey, I just shut down. I need a minute. If you could give me some time, I'd like to come back together a little bit later. And then communicate what the fuck happened for me. But instead, I just shut down, and now I can't be close to you. You're unsafe. And then I'm in a I'm almost out of time. I'm in a first tradition, which is, about unity. And so when I do that, I create disunity within my relationship. And I'm just talking about her, but I'm not talking about, friendships, my relationships at work, because the same thing happens, just differently. So I could give you plenty of examples where I cause disunity or practice disunity at work. But anyway, so, and I think, so when I was reading about the 12 step, just to circle back, I could talk about a lot of shit for a long time. But when I was reading the 12 step, I'll just, give me 1 second, guys. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry the message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And I think the most important thing there for me is we tried to carry the message to addicts, and of course the principle part, because I'm working on practicing principles in all my affairs. But like me carrying the message, like I want to be honest. And the truth is that a week ago, I kind of wanted to use. You know what I'm saying? But I'm being honest about that because I know that's not what I'm going to do one moment at a time. And when I call somebody and I just laid on her floor while she was working my sponsee, and she was talking, which was fine. But I was just like, I don't know, I'm crying again. Just like on and off. But because I know it's instilled in me, go to a meeting, call somebody, like don't be alone. But anyway, so I am practicing when I was reading through the 12th step, to me it means vulnerability and honesty more than anything else. And if I'm not honest with myself, how am I going to practice a 12th step interacting with anyone in Narcotics Anonymous as a whole if I'm not being honest with me? And then with you guys about where I'm at. So I love you guys so much, and I love Narcotics Anonymous. I hope, if you got something great, if you didn't, that's okay too. I'm not going to try to control it. I want to.